I arrived in Mazamitla with resin on my tongue and the kind of chill that sits in the cartilage of your ears. The town looked like a postcard someone had breathed on, white walls and tiled roofs sloping into a fog that unrolled from the pines, the bell of the church tolling like a spoon in a glass. We checked into a small hotel tucked behind the church, old wood thinner than you'd want between your body and whatever walked at night. The floorboards protested every step, long, slow groans that felt less like wood and more like a throat clearing. The clerk gave us the keys across a counter that had been varnished so many times the knots in the pine looked like old bruises. He glanced at the window as if measuring how much daylight was left, then leaned closer. "If you come back late," he said, "whatever happens, go straight to your room." He smiled afterward, a habit smile, but the words hung in the air like steam. I told myself it was a provincial trick to make the place feel special, to sell us a little fear with the bedsheets. We dropped our bags, the door thumped shut, and the room exhaled the slow smell of rain trapped in boards, of soap that had lost its name. Someone before us had smoked clove cigarettes. Sweetness haunted the curtains. The bathroom tiles were the color of old milk, and the tub wore a ring you could have dated with carbon. From the window, the steeple's cross tilted into the fog as if listening to something below. We went out to eat while the mountains put on their shawl. The streets were wet with the thin shine that makes stones look fresh minted. A dog trotted past with pine needles stuck to its wet legs. At the restaurant, the meat was salty and good, the beer colder than the bones of the hill. By the time we walked back, it was close to midnight and the mist had grown teeth. I remembered the clerk's warning, and even though we were laughing, too loudly the way people laugh to keep the dark at arm's length, I felt a tug in the chest and said we should hurry. The hall beyond the hotel's front door was a plank of darkness with lamps that came on in halos, leaving islands of blindness between them. I kept my hand on the rail up to the second floor and listened to our feet announce us room by room. At the door, the key resisted, then surrendered with a sound like something giving up. We stepped inside and the floor settled beneath us, slow as breath. I clicked the bathroom light and stood a moment in the warm hum of it, a tired moth of a bulb buzzing over porcelain. That's when it started, a small metallic roll in the tub. Not loud, but fat with intention, as if a coin had been set down by an unseen hand at the high end of the enamel and let go. It rolled, found the drain, clicked once and then again as if circling the plug. I waited for the second sound and it came, obedient, a sound map of something I could not see. I told myself it was a loose cap, a button, a bead forgotten by a child. I told myself many things as we brushed our teeth and pretended not to look at each other in the mirror. In bed, the springs announced the weight of me to the room. The night pressed its face to the window. The creaking of the boards resolved into a rhythm, the way a train finds a beat on the tracks, and I let the sound carry me until the edges of the ceiling softened. Somewhere between waking and sleep, I heard a whisper of water like lips against a rim, and then silence so whole it ached. Dawn in Mazamitla is not light, but a slow revealing. The fog recedes inch by inch, and the trees materialize like things forgiven. I went to the bathroom to wash my face, and there it was in the tub, a dark coin the size of a thumbnail, its surface greened with time, scabbed with the fur of neglect. Metal has a smell, and this one had kept the smell of hands long gone. I picked it up and it left a bruise of cold on my palm. On the edge of the tub, a faint ring of moisture traced the path something had taken in the night. At the desk, when we turned in the keys for a day trip, the clerk noticed the coin as if it had raised its head and asked to be seen. "Where did you get that?" he asked. The room behind his eyes went still. I told him in the bathroom, meaning to sound careless, as if odd things beautified our stay. He shook his head, an old movement learned from older men. "Those don't come from the rooms," he said. "Only from the well." He pointed with his mouth the way rural people do, toward the narrow courtyard every guest crosses without really entering, where a stone circle sits under a tin shade, dark as a pupil. "People used to throw them in," he added softer, "to ask for the road to return them." He used the verb in a way I hadn't heard. Return them, like the road might keep you if you didn't pay it properly. I laughed a little and turned the coin with my thumb. He watched me and the corner of his mouth tightened. "Don't take them out," he said. "They're not for pockets." Outside, the church bells carried low and the fog frayed into strips. My friends were already talking about horses and waterfalls, about photographs and hot chocolate. I slipped the coin into the small pocket inside my jeans, the one no one uses, and told myself I was keeping it because all places deserve to be carried forward. Because I like the weight of stories, and this was one I could hold. If I'm honest, I wanted proof. I wanted something to insist that what I felt in that room, the roll and click, the way the night stood listening on the other side of the glass, had left a mark that wasn't only in me. We walked past the church where an old woman under a shawl burned a curl of copal resin in a dish. The smoke made a slow rope into the air, sweet and sick, a scent that folds the body back on itself. There is a rule in many places, so old no one remembers who first said it, that you do not take what belongs to the prayer. Coins in wells, ribbons on crosses, stones from cairns, salt from the lip of a shrine. They are offerings, not objects. The rule is not about theft, it is about the grammar of the world. We think we talk to it, but sometimes the world answers, and the answer has its own syntax. I knew this in the way you know not to look over your shoulder when a dog stops barking, but knowledge is a thin shield against curiosity. The day wore on and the sun found the bones of the town. We rode under canopies of pine and let the cold water of the Cascades bite our ankles, birds stitched between trunks. Everywhere I went, the coin nudged the seam of my pocket, a small steady presence against the hip bone. I began to think of it not as a mistake, but as a decision already made by a version of me who sleeps with the window unlatched. Evening comes quickly in the mountains. The light goes grainy as if someone rubbed it with a cloth. On the way back to the hotel, we cut behind the church. The well waited in its circle of shade. Stones slick with moss, a mouth too patient. I stopped. The coin felt heavier all at once, as if the air near the well had thickened and was pulling it down. I told myself I'd drop it back in later, that I'd make a small ceremony of it, that I'd say thank you and sorry and it would all be clean. But we were hungry, and the mist was coming and the floorboards upstairs would need us to explain our weight again. Back in the room, the window showed only a match sheet of breath. I turned off the bathroom light and the dark swam back instantly. From the corner of the tub came the faintest scrape, like fingernails finding glaze. It could have been anything. It could have been memory, which is worse. I lay down and pressed my palm to my pocket, feeling the cold circle there, as if I had caged a small moon. Somewhere below, a door sighed and closed. The building settled deeper onto its haunches. I listened long enough to learn the cadence of its sleep. This is how it began, with a warning given like a courtesy, with a coin that did not want the warmth of my skin, with a well behind a church that kept its promises like a ledger. I did not yet know there are some roads that return you only if you leave them what you owe. The second day started with light that looked tired of itself. Thin, white, already losing to the fog that crawled down from the pines. We decided to walk to a nearby store. 15 minutes away, the clerk had said, easy enough for an afternoon errand before the next rain. There were 4 of us, Luis, his girlfriend Anna, my brother, and me. We left the hotel at 5 with the sun still holding onto the ridges like a wet coin refusing to drop. The first part of the road was pleasant, earth-packed by the hooves of animals, scent of pine sap and iron from the mountain's veins. The trees leaned closer as we walked, the sound of our boots pressing the silence into shape. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The air thickened, and the road kept turning without arriving anywhere. The only sound was our own breath, too loud against the hush of everything else. When the first houses appeared, they were already swallowing their paint. Windows clouded from inside, doors half-hinged, roofs stooping as though tired of holding up years. A village, yes, but one that had forgotten how to wake. We saw no one, no smoke, no voices, no barking. Anna whispered, "It smells like dust and candle wax," and I knew exactly what she meant, the odor of something that had been left burning too long. A little store stood at the corner, its sign bleached into illegibility. Inside, jars of candy had turned to amber fossils, and the shelves wore the fur of disuse. When we stepped in, the door gave a squeal so high it felt alive. There was no one behind the counter. A single light bulb swung as if something unseen had just brushed past. We left without buying anything. Farther down the same road, another shop appeared, smaller but with a woman sweeping her porch. She looked at us as if we'd come from underwater. "You're staying at the cabins?" she asked before we said a word. We nodded. "Then yes," she said. "They're 15 minutes that way." She pointed back the way we'd come. I laughed because it felt safer than thinking. "We must have taken the long way," I said. But when we turned around, the road was different, narrower, the trees crowding it as though reclaiming a mistake. We walked fast, almost trotting, afraid of losing the light entirely. It was darker than it should have been for that hour, the kind of dark that comes from the ground up instead of the sky down. An hour later, we saw the sign of the hotel through the mist. My watch said 7:40. My legs said we had been walking far longer. Louis swore under his breath. Anna didn't speak. We climbed the creaking stairs and found the others sitting in the small common room, a half-finished deck of cards on the table. They looked up as if we were ghosts. "You're late," one said, "and where the hell were you?" "We went to the store," I answered, 15 minutes away." "No," Anna said quietly. "More than that." Then the girl who had stayed behind, Lucia, looked at Anna, her face drained. "I went looking for you," she said. I reached the town in 15 minutes. I heard kids laughing. They sounded close, but there were no kids. Just laughter." Louise frowned. "We didn't see you. There's only one path." She nodded, her lips trembling. "That's what's wrong." The room shrank around the words. The air felt thin, metallic, like the breath before lightning. We turned off the hallway lights early that night. I tried to read, but the letters wouldn't stay still. When I closed my eyes, I saw the woman sweeping her porch, moving her broom in small circles as though sweeping the same patch of air forever. At some point, I must have slept. The dream, if it was one, came sharp and exact. The road stretching behind me, the sound of our own footsteps still echoing ahead, as though we were following ourselves. In the distance, a child's giggle threaded through the trees high and quick, and then another and another, overlapping until it became a language. I woke to the sound of dripping. The window was open, though I hadn't touched it. Outside, the fog pulsed faintly as if breathing. Somewhere in it, I thought I heard the echo of small bare feet running on wet earth. Morning brought no explanation, only damp socks and eyes that couldn't meet each other's. Over breakfast, Lucia asked softly, "Do you think maybe it was the coin?" I didn't answer. My hand went instinctively to my pocket where the metal slept cold against my skin. I thought of the clerk's warning, of roads that keep you if you take what isn't yours, and of laughter with no mouths behind it. Later that day, we planned to visit the cabins deeper in the forest. Cheap ones, the clerk had said, rustic charm. He'd smiled when he said it, but now I wondered if that smile had meant something else. The others seemed eager, maybe to shake off the unease that still clung to us like smoke. As we loaded our bags into the van, a gust of wind passed through the courtyard. It carried the faintest echo of children's laughter, so soft it could have been imagination. But the clerk looked up sharply from his ledger and crossed himself once fast, as if to erase what he'd just heard. That night, the forest would answer our curiosity. We arrived at the cabin just before sunset, when the forest had started to swallow the color out of everything. The road turned to gravel and then to dirt until it was more memory than path. Pines rose on either side like columns in a cathedral no one had prayed in for centuries. The cabin sat in a clearing, 2 stories of dark wood and fog-stained windows, its roof sagging slightly under the weight of years. "Perfect for ghost stories," Luis said, forcing a laugh. He was always the one to joke when the air got too heavy. The rest of us only smiled because smiling was easier than admitting that something felt wrong the moment we saw the place. Inside, the cabin smelled of rain caught in timber. The floor groaned, the walls sighed. It felt alive, or at least unwilling to forget. There were 3 rooms, 1 downstairs, 2 above, 12 of us in total. The downstairs room went to the girls, the rest of us scattered between the upper floors. I took the smaller room under the gabled roof with my brother and Luis. The windows looked out into the trees where the fog pooled like water. While we unpacked, Luis kept turning toward the bathroom mirror. It was large, mounted on the opposite wall, and if you stood at the sink, you could see the top of the stairs reflected behind you. He was brushing his teeth when he froze. "Did one of you just walk past?" he asked, his voice flat. "No," I said. We were both in the room. The others were outside unloading beer from the car. "I saw someone," he whispered, still staring into the mirror. "Right behind me, it—" He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind." We laughed it off. That's how it begins. One laugh to seal a small terror into a joke. You do it to keep your hands steady. By nightfall, the cabin was warm with noise. Bottles clinking, music low, the smell of tequila and damp clothes. We sat around the table telling the kind of stories people tell when they don't believe in consequences. One of the girls dared the air to show itself. Luis raised his glass and joined in. "If there's anything here," he said, "prove it." The words came out slurred but heavy, like they'd been waiting for the right mouth to carry them. We all laughed again. It was that kind of laughter, the nervous kind borrowed from courage we didn't have. Outside, the forest did not answer. Around midnight, most of us had drifted off. The cabin exhaled into quiet, the kind that rings in your ears. That was when the whispering began. Not words, just the dry shuffle of wood expanding, or so we thought. Luis and Anna slept in the bigger room by the window that caught the moonlight. Later, he told me he woke up because the light had changed. It had gone cold, silver gray, the color of bones underwater. Through the thin curtain, he saw the outline of a person standing beside their bed, still, watching. He didn't scream, he didn't move. He just reached for Anna and pulled the blanket over both of them like children hiding from a storm. He said the shape didn't leave, didn't even fade. It simply stepped back, swallowed by the pale glow until the room was empty again. When he told me the next morning, his voice trembled so slightly I almost missed it. "It wasn't a shadow," he said. "It had weight." We spent the day pretending. We went down to the town square, bought food, hiked to a waterfall that smelled of minerals and wet leaves. By the time we returned, the sun had already bled out behind the ridge. The cabin waited, its windows black. The door was open. No one remembered leaving it that way. Inside, every door, every cupboard, every drawer gaped as if the house had been searched. Even the refrigerator hung ajar, its pale light pulsing weakly in the dark. Nothing was missing, not the food, not the laptop I'd left charging on the table, not even the wallets by the sink. Just everything opened, exposed, breathing. My brother closed the main door and checked the lock twice. "Wind," he said, though we all knew wind doesn't turn handles or lift latches. That night, the drinking was quieter. No more dares, no more challenges. We sat close, talking softly, the fire painting our faces in copper. Then it came, the sharp rush of water from upstairs, the unmistakable sound of a toilet flushing. We froze, no one moved. The fire cracked once, and even that seemed too loud. Luis looked at me. "You locked the bathroom, right?" I nodded. My mouth was too dry to speak. Silence returned, but it wasn't empty. It had shape and edges. It felt like something listening. I wanted to laugh again, to cut through it, and what came out was a bark of false bravado. "Hey, enough already!" My voice cracked the air like a stick. "Stop messing around!" No one laughed this time, not even me. After that, we didn't say another word. We just sat, waiting for something else to answer. When I finally lay down, the room smelled faintly of burnt wood and iron. I watched the beam of moonlight crawl across the ceiling until sleep or something like it took me. I dreamed of doors breathing in the dark, of mirrors that sighed when you looked away. At dawn, the first thing I saw was the bathroom door half open again. The third night began with an argument. Money, food, something small enough to forget by morning. But the tension left the air brittle. Everyone spoke too loudly, laughed too quickly. We wanted to believe that if we kept the noise high enough, whatever listened inside these walls would lose interest. By the time we calmed down, it was close to midnight. The fire had gone to embers, the bottles half empty. I sat at the table staring at the grain of the wood, at the way the shadows from the lantern trembled like breath. Upstairs door shut and opened as people drifted off to bed. The house settled again. That long wooden sigh that always sounded like a word you couldn't quite catch. Then the sound came, a slow creak of the door handle upstairs. I looked up thinking maybe someone had gone to the bathroom, but it stopped mid-turn like fingers had frozen on the metal. After that, silence. A silence so deep you could hear the pressure in your own ears. A few seconds later, from above, the toilet flushed again. It was the same quick rush, mechanical but too deliberate, as if someone was standing there waiting for us to notice. Luis swore under his breath. "No one's up there," he whispered. I wanted to say something, anything to break the moment, but what came out was a shout, a stupid, desperate attempt at control. "All right, that's enough!" My voice bounced off the walls, ugly and small. "Cut it out, whoever you are." Nobody laughed. The sound fell flat, swallowed by wood and distance. We waited for a reply that didn't come. We tried to pretend after that, to talk about the next day, to finish our drinks. But the air had changed. It had a thickness to it, like fog you could drown in. When we finally went to bed, I locked our door from the inside. I remember the way the key stuck, reluctant, as if the lock itself was afraid to hold. The moonlight crawled across the ceiling. My brother slept against the wall, Luis by the door. I must have drifted off because when I opened my eyes again, the world had gone silent. The kind of silence that hurts. Then a voice, whispered low enough to mistake for thought. "Carlos, wake up." I turned, half dreaming, and saw Luis leaning toward me, his face pale. "Someone's trying to get in," he said. The handle on the door turned slowly. Metal against metal, the squeal of pressure. It twisted a little more, then stopped. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might wake the others. The door shivered. One soft push, then another. "Maybe it's the wind," my brother muttered, not believing a word of it. But then came the sound that tore that hope apart, the patter of feet running down the hall, then down the stairs, fast, violent, the rhythm of panic. The steps hit the wall hard, as if someone or something was slamming into it with both hands. The noise spread through the cabin like a wave, shaking the wood under us. It went on for half a minute, maybe more, then stopped with a single crash. A window, by the sound of it, exploding in the bathroom below. The silence that followed was worse. We waited, frozen, until my brother, always the brave one, stood up. "It's a thief," he said. "We have to check." He grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't move. The door held fast, as though someone was pulling it from the other side. I saw the muscles in his arms tense as he tried again, grunting, pressing his shoulder into the wood. "It's stuck," he hissed. "Push," Louis said, getting up beside him. They leaned together, the hinges groaning. Finally, with a sudden snap, the door gave way, flinging them forward into the hall. The corridor beyond was empty. The shadows stretched long and still. We searched the house, every corner, every room. The downstairs window was unbroken. No glass, no draft, nothing disturbed except the air itself, thick with something we couldn't name. When I opened the small closet by the stairs, the smell hit first. Dust and resin and something older, sweeter. Inside, leaning against the wall, was a crucifix. Nearly a meter tall, carved from dark wood, the edges worn by fingers. Christ's face was smooth from touch, the eyes almost erased. "Why would that be locked away?" Louis asked. My brother lifted it carefully, the way you handle a body. "Maybe the owners left it here," he said, "for protection." The word protection felt too small. Still, we carried it upstairs and set it in the hallway outside our rooms, the way you leave a light on for a child. None of us spoke much after that. The others drifted off to sleep, one by one. I lay on the top bunk, eyes open, listening. At first, just the normal sounds, the ticking of wood, the breath of sleepers, then the shuffle. Slow, uneven, like bare feet dragging across old boards. It moved between the beds, stopping every few steps. I held my breath. The air grew colder, heavy, with the faint scent of metal and something damp like soil. Then the mattress beneath me sank, slightly, deliberately, as though someone had knelt beside me. A hand, cold and narrow, closed around my ankle. It didn't pull hard, just enough to let me know it was there. I screamed. The sound tore through the cabin, wild and helpless. Lights snapped on, people shouted. When the others reached me, there was nothing to see. Only the impression of weight gone from the mattress, the echo of my own pulse. We tried to calm down, to laugh it off, to pretend it was a dream. But then the pounding began. Slow, rhythmic blows from below against the inner walls of the cabin, each one shaking the floor under our feet. The dogs outside started barking, furious and terrified, their voices layering until it sounded like the forest itself was howling. It went on until the first gray light of morning. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. We sat together in silence, the 12 of us, staring at the crucifix in the hallway. It hadn't fallen. It hadn't moved. But the air around it felt charged, like static before a storm. Outside, the dogs still barked at the door. Not at us, but at something behind it. Morning didn't feel like morning. The sun had risen, yes, but the light that seeped through the cabin windows looked drained, as if it had traveled too far to reach us. We hadn't slept. No one had. The dogs had barked until nearly dawn, then gone silent all at once, like something had passed among them and pressed their throats shut. We moved through the house quietly, each of us careful not to speak the obvious. The crucifix still stood in the hallway where we had left it, the wood darker than before, the nails faintly rusted. When my brother brushed his hand against it, he frowned. "It's warm," he said. The air around it wasn't. Downstairs, the smell of smoke lingered, though no one had lit a fire. The window that should have shattered the night before was intact. glass flawless, no dust on the sill. And yet, on the inside of the pane, faint lines curved down like condensation trails left by fingers. 5 of them. We packed, though none of us said the word leave. It was only when Anna asked if anyone had touched her suitcase, moved it maybe, that we realized some of our belongings had been shifted in the night. Shoes out of order, phones unplugged, blankets folded the wrong way, as if something had tidied the place while we pretended to rest. Around noon, Luis proposed we take a walk, clear our heads. It was better than sitting still, waiting for the house to remember us again. The forest was bright but too quiet. Even the birds seemed to be holding their breath. When the wind moved, it came from all directions at once. We followed the trail toward the waterfall, our footsteps muffled by wet pine needles. I tried to tell myself it was over, that maybe fear was contagious and we'd all caught it. Then I saw the shape carved into one of the trees, a small cross identical to the one upstairs burned deep into the bark. Below it, someone had scratched words in Spanish, "No te lleves nada," don't take anything. The coin in my pocket seemed to notice. I could feel its cold edge against my leg, heavier than it should have been. By the time we returned, the cabin seemed smaller, as if the forest had crept closer in our absence. The others went to the kitchen to cook. I went upstairs, telling myself I wanted to nap, but really just wanting to see the crucifix again. It leaned against the wall, unmoved, but the air around it shimmered faintly as though heat rose from invisible coals. I sat at the top of the stairs and closed my eyes for a moment. The quiet was almost kind. Then I heard it. The faint drag of feet on the floorboards. Slow, deliberate. They stopped at the end of the hallway. I didn't move. The steps came closer. One, then another, each one followed by the soft scrape of skin on wood. I opened my eyes just as the noise reached the doorway. No one stood there, but the light had dimmed, and the crucifix cast a long, quivering shadow across the floor. I went to the bunk and pulled the blanket over me like a child. The air felt electric, thick with a vibration you could feel more than hear. Then the mattress dipped, a soft, slow pressure at my feet. The weight crawled upward, careful, almost tender. When the hand wrapped around my calf, it was colder than metal. The grip tightened, pulling, not to drag me, but to wake me. As if something wanted me to open my eyes and see it. I couldn't. My throat locked, my body refused to move. The next thing I remember is my own scream tearing the silence open. The others burst into the room, flicking on the light. Luis grabbed my shoulders, shaking me, asking what happened. I could only point to the end of the bed where the blanket had sunk as if pressed by a knee. No one spoke for a long time. Then the pounding began again. 3 hits, slow, measured from the wall below. Then 3 more, each one heavier, as if whatever was beneath us was learning rhythm. The dogs outside started barking again, not in fear this time, but in rage. Their cries echoed off the trees, wild, desperate, surrounding the cabin like a warning. They didn't stop for half an hour. When they did, the quiet felt like drowning. The morning that followed was sharp with frost. We gathered our things without talking. Luis found his laptop still on the table, the screen cracked straight down the middle. My brother checked the crucifix one last time. It had gone cold again. As we stepped outside, I looked back through the open door. The interior seemed darker than it should be at that hour. On the wall above the spot where the crucifix had stood, a faint outline remained. An imprint burned into the wood like something had leaned there too long and left its shape behind. We drove away without looking back. But from the rear window, I caught the last glimpse of the dogs. They were still there, sitting in the mud, staring at the house. Not barking now, not moving, just watching the door as if waiting for it to open again. That's when I realized the truth that had been circling us since the first night. Nothing in that cabin had wanted to scare us away. It wanted us to stay. We told ourselves it was over. We said it enough times that for a while I almost believed it. The road out of Mazamitla was a serpent of fog and gravel. The forest thinned and widened, the air tasting of wet stone and pine resin. Yet even as the town disappeared behind the hills, the silence inside the van didn't lift. Everyone stared through the glass as if waiting for the trees to follow us. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, that the sound I kept hearing, like something dragging its nails along the side of the van, was only branches brushing the metal. But then came the smell. Faint at first, like old coins left in water, iron, moss, and rot, the same scent that had filled the cabin the moment before the footsteps started. When we reached the highway, the noise stopped. The forest fell away and sunlight broke through the clouds in thin blades. Luis laughed, a nervous burst that scattered into the air. "See," he said, "just stories." But none of us answered. Back in Guadalajara, life tried to return to its usual rhythm: classes, work, traffic. I washed my clothes twice, trying to get rid of the cabin smell. It didn't work. Even after the second wash, they still carried that faint sweetness of burned wood. And the coin, I couldn't throw it away. I tried twice. The first time I left it on the nightstand. The second time I walked to the canal near my apartment and tossed it into the water. The next morning it was back in my jeans pocket, slick with condensation. I told myself I must have imagined it. Weeks passed. The others stopped talking about Mazamitla, but I couldn't. At night I'd wake to a sound like knuckles brushing glass. I'd get up, turn on the light, and find nothing, only the window, fogged from the inside, a palm print fading in the condensation. I tried to pray. I wasn't much of a believer, but desperation bends you toward faith. I whispered the only words I remembered from childhood, half a verse, a fragment of a lullaby my mother used to sing, "Que el Señor te guarde." May the Lord keep you. It didn't help. Then one night I dreamed of the forest. I was walking the trail toward the waterfall. The air was thick and bright, every sound sharp as glass. Up ahead, between the trees, a figure crouched in the shadows. Long arms, narrow back, skin the color of bark. When I raised my flashlight, it didn't flinch. Its head tilted, and two eyes opened, reflecting the light like polished metal. The same shape we had seen in the bushes near the cabin. The same silent watcher. When I woke, the room smelled of earth and rain, though the window was closed. The coin sat on my desk, wet. I told Luis the next day. He laughed it off, but I could see his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. "You think it followed us?" he asked. "It's not us," I said. "It's me." He didn't argue. He just looked at me for a long time, then said, "You should go back." The idea sounded insane, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The clerk had warned us. The woman's carving on the tree had warned us. Don't take anything. Maybe that was all it wanted, to be returned. So I drove back to Mazamitla alone. The road felt longer, the light colder. I reached the town just before evening. The same fog waited for me, rolling in from the forest like smoke. The hotel behind the church still stood, though the sign was half rotted. Inside, a different clerk sat behind the counter, an old woman with a cross of ash on her forehead. "I stayed here before," I told her. "Months ago, there was a man, your receptionist. He warned us about the nights." Her eyes didn't move from me. "We haven't had a man here for years." I didn't argue. I only asked one thing. "The well behind the church, does it still have coins?" Her lips tightened. "If you took one," she said, "you know what to do." The courtyard was empty. The fog coiled low around the stones, the sound of dripping echoing from somewhere unseen. I found the well easily, its rim slick with moss, the mouth black and endless. I knelt, took the coin from my pocket. It was colder than ever, as if it had never touched a living hand. "I'm sorry," I said, voice trembling. "It wasn't mine." I dropped it in. It didn't clink or splash, just vanished, swallowed by the dark. For a long time, nothing happened. Then the air changed. The fog lifted slightly and the night seemed to exhale. I stood, waited. The church bell tolled once, just once, and the echo carried through the pines. I thought that was the end of it. But as I turned to leave, something moved in the mist. A shape bent low to the ground, crawling, watching. Two faint lights blinked like eyes catching fire. The next sound I heard was laughter, small, soft, like children playing far away. The same laughter from that impossible town in the woods. It circled me, fading in and out until I couldn't tell where it came from. When it stopped, I realized I was standing alone again, hand trembling over the lip of the well. I took a step back, then another until I reached the church door. Inside, the candles flickered, though there was no wind. I looked up at the crucifix on the altar and whispered the only prayer I remembered in full. "Deliver us from evil." The air felt clean. For the first time in months, I could breathe. When I stepped outside, the mist had thinned. The forest stood still. The night was only night again, or so I thought. Back in Guadalajara, I slept without dreams for the first time since Mazamitla. But when I woke the next morning, there was dirt on the floor by my bed, pine needles, damp, smelling of moss. And beside them, pressed into the wood, the faint outline of a handprint. I tried to tell myself it was imagination, that maybe the dirt had stuck to my shoes, that the handprint was just a trick of light and fatigue. But lies only work when the night is quiet. And mine had stopped being quiet long ago. Days passed. The pine smell in my apartment refused to fade, and the faint bruise-like shape on the floor grew darker, as if it had been burned into the wood from below. I started sleeping less, eating almost nothing. I worked during the day, but when the sun fell, the city lights flickered like distant fires, and I would find myself glancing toward the corners of the room, waiting for something that never fully appeared. One evening, as I left work, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Only 3 words. "Lo devolviste?" "Did you return it?" I froze. There was no photo, no name, no profile picture. I typed back, "Who is this?" The message never delivered. That night I dreamt of Mazamitla again. The forest stretched endlessly, fog hanging low, and through it came the sound of metal rolling across porcelain, the same sound from the hotel bathtub. Then a woman's voice, low and slow, speaking from somewhere inside the trees. "What you take, you carry. What you carry, carries you." I woke up gasping. My hands smelled faintly of copper. I didn't go back to work the next day. Instead, I took a bus to the edge of the city and walked into the hills where the air still smelled of pine. I needed distance, I told myself. I needed to see if fear could get lost the way a person can. The path wound through abandoned chapels and half-built houses. Somewhere near dusk, I found an old shrine, a stone niche with candles melted down to their wicks, a crucifix blackened by smoke. Someone had scrawled words into the soot of the wall. "Pide permiso." Ask permission. I don't know why, but I knelt. Maybe habit, maybe desperation. The wind hissed through the dry grass. "If I carried something out of that place," I whispered. "If I offended something that belongs there, I'm sorry, I'm tired." Silence answered first. Then faintly from the ravine below came the echo of children laughing. I ran. When I reached home, the lights in my apartment were already on. I was sure I had turned them off. On the table sat a small wooden carving, a cross, rough, crude, but unmistakably the same shape as the one from the cabin's hallway. My breath caught. I touched it. The wood was warm, almost pulsing. That night I didn't sleep. I sat watching the cross on the table while the hours crawled by. Around 3, the air shifted. The shadows in the room seemed to pull inward, toward the carving. The temperature dropped so fast that my breath turned visible. Then came the sound. The faint rhythmic dragging of feet, the same that had moved between the bunks that night in Mazamitla. The noise circled the room once, then stopped behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't. A whisper brushed the back of my neck. "Mamá dice que ya es hora." Mom says it's time. My whole body locked. The same phrase Luis had shouted toward the dark room in that strange house near the town square. "Mamá, vete para allá." The one I thought I'd escaped. I turned then slow and saw her. She stood half in shadow, half in light, a figure thin as wire, her head bowed so low I couldn't see her face. Her hands hung at her sides, fingers gray and damp. Every breath she took rattled like leaves in a jar. Behind her, the wall where the handprint had been was now blackened, the mark spreading upward like mold. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered, voice trembling as though forced through broken lungs. "He doesn't like it when they come back." The air thinned, my ears filled with a low hum, the same infrasound pulse we had felt in the cabin, the vibration that lives under silence. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. When I looked up again, she was gone. In her place lay the wooden cross, split clean in two. The lights flickered once, twice, and steadied. The room was empty again, but the smell remained. Pine, smoke, and something older. The smell of prayers that never finished. I didn't know who he was, the one she had mentioned, the one who didn't like those who came back. But I knew then that Mazamitla wasn't just a place. It was a wound, and wounds remember who opened them. That night, I packed everything I owned into boxes. I thought of leaving Mexico entirely. But deep down, I knew borders didn't matter. Some things follow in ways that don't need roads. As I sealed the last box, a coin rolled out from under it, green with rust, wet and humming faintly as if someone had just breathed across its surface. I stared at that coin for a long time. It shouldn't have been there. I'd watched it fall into the well. I'd heard it vanish into darkness without even a splash. Yet there it was, on my floor, trembling slightly as though the wood beneath it were breathing. I wanted to run, but there are moments when fear roots you deeper than courage ever could. I knelt instead, reached out, and the air around the coin turned cold enough to bite. When I touched it, the hum stopped. The metal stuck to my fingers, wet and warm, as if it had just been taken from someone's mouth. My phone lit up. A message. Unknown number again. No se devuelve lo que ya aceptaste. You don't return what you've already accepted. The letters blurred as my hand shook. Before I could reply, the screen flickered and went dark. In the reflection behind my shoulder, someone moved. I turned, nothing there. Only the narrow window above the sink, half open, the curtain breathing in and out with the wind. Outside, the night pressed close, and for a second I thought I saw the outline of trees. Pines, impossibly tall, though there were none anywhere near this neighborhood. The next days passed in a blur. I barely ate. Sleep came in short, fevered bursts, the same dream again and again. I was back in the forest, walking toward a cabin that no longer had walls, only pillars of smoke. A woman waited by the door, her face hidden by a shawl. Beside her, a small child held something cupped in both hands. A coin, green and slick. The child smiled, and when I looked closer, I realized the smile was carved. Not real. The lips didn't move, but a voice whispered from within. You took her place. When I woke, there were scratches on the inside of my bedroom door, 3 long marks from bottom to top, like something had climbed, not scratched. That was when I decided to find the others. Luis had moved. His number didn't work. Ana answered once, long enough to tell me she didn't want to talk about Mazamitla ever again. It's done, she said. Don't call me. Only my brother agreed to meet. We sat in a cafe near the old university. He looked thinner, older, though barely a year had passed. I told him about the coin, about the messages, the woman, the dreams. He listened quietly, then said, "I've seen her too." He leaned closer, voice low. A week after we came back, I started hearing knocking on my door at exactly 3 in the morning, always 3 times. Then silence. I moved apartments. It followed. I stared at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because saying it makes it stronger," he said. "It's not the place, Carlos. It's what the place wanted us to carry out." He reached into his jacket and pulled something from his pocket. A small wooden splinter, dark, nearly black. "From the crucifix," he said. "It broke the day after we left. I kept it without realizing. I think..." He paused. "I think it marked us. That night I burned the coin, or tried to. I lit it over the stove, watching the flame lick its surface. It glowed faintly red, then green, then nothing. When the fire died, the coin remained unchanged, but the metal was ice cold. From somewhere outside, a child laughed. I went to the window. The street was empty except for a woman walking slowly along the opposite sidewalk. She wore a long skirt, her back bent beneath the weight of a bundle. As she passed under the streetlight, I saw what hung from her hand, a plastic bag dripping dark liquid swinging with each step. Inside it, the shape of something small and limp, a cat maybe, or something that had once been one. She didn't look up, but as she passed, the laughter came again. Closed this time, like it came from behind the glass, not outside it. I stumbled back. The coin fell from my hand, rolling across the tiles until it hit the wall and stopped upright, perfectly balanced. The light flickered. For an instant, the reflection in the glass changed. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. Behind me stretched the forest, the same one, endless and silver with mist. And in the distance, half hidden by fog, I could see the cabin. Its windows glowed faintly as if something inside still burned. I blinked, and the vision was gone, but on the glass remained a mark, the faint outline of a handprint, the same one that had followed me since that night, the same size, same angle, as if pressed from the other side. I sat on the floor until dawn, listening. Somewhere far away, church bells tolled once, then twice, and the sound seemed to come not from the city but from deep within the woods. I knew then what I had to do. Not to escape, not to cleanse, but to end the conversation I had started the night I took the coin. I would have to return one last time. I left before sunrise. The city still slept behind me, its windows pale with early light, unaware that someone was driving toward the place the earth forgot to bless. The road to Mazamitla felt older than before, like it had been waiting. The closer I got, the more the fog thickened, folding over the hood of the car like breath on glass. By the time I reached the first pine, the sky had vanished completely. The forest recognized me. That's the only way I can describe it. The trees leaned inward, the road narrowing until it became a single trail of wet soil. I could hear the hum of water running underground, the whisper of insects, and beneath it all, something slower, deeper, almost like a heart. The town appeared without warning, a cluster of shapes behind the mist. The streets were empty, the same cobblestones, slick and green. Even the air smelled unchanged, resin, moss, a faint sweetness like old incense. I passed the church, its bell tower shrouded in fog, and stopped in front of the well. It was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I had grown into its shadow. The rim was damp, the stones cold to the touch. I looked down, but the bottom was invisible, a mouth swallowing light. My fingers brushed the edge and came back wet, though it hadn't rained. "I came back," I said softly. My voice vanished before it could echo. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air began to move. The fog swirled inside the courtyard like something breathing beneath it. I felt the same pulse in my chest that I'd heard on the drive, the slow, heavy rhythm of something alive. "I brought everything back," I whispered. I took the splinter of the crucifix my brother had given me and the coin I had burned. I set them both on the rim of the well. "Take them. Let us go." The sound that rose from below was not wind. It was laughter, small, childlike, the same laughter that had followed us through the woods. It climbed the stones, circling me, growing louder until it became a chorus. My knees weakened. "Please," I said. "Enough." The laughter stopped. From the darkness inside the well, water began to rise. Not a flood, not even a trickle, just a slow, deliberate swelling, as if the well itself was breathing in. The surface shimmered, and for an instant I saw a face reflected there, pale, eyeless, with lips that didn't move but still spoke. "You can't give back what the forest has claimed." The reflection broke. The water stilled. I turned and ran. The church door was open, candles flickering, though no one had lit them. Inside, the air felt thicker, older. I knelt before the altar and pressed my forehead to the cold wood. "I didn't mean to take it," I said. "I just wanted proof." The wind answered, sweeping through the pews like a sigh. One of the candles went out. The others bent toward the door. When I stepped outside, the mist had parted. The path through the woods lay open, darker than before but clear. I walked until the trees swallowed the church behind me. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang once. At the edge of the forest, I found the cabin. The roof had caved in, the windows shattered, vines climbing the door frame like veins. It smelled of earth and time. I pushed the door open. The crucifix was gone. The bunk still stood, the mattresses sunken and black with mold. On the wall above one of them, written in soot, were words I hadn't seen before. "Siempre vuelve." It always comes back. I felt the floor shift under my feet. A sound like breath, deep and slow, rose from beneath the boards. My pulse matched it. When I looked down, the cracks between the planks glowed faintly, green like the rust on the coin. And then through the doorway behind me, someone laughed. I turned. A figure stood in the fog, half hidden by the light, small, childlike. The same outline we'd seen between the trees the first night. Its eyes shone dull silver. Behind it, more shapes moved, low to the ground, too many legs, too many arms. I backed away until my hand brushed the wall. Something cold closed around my wrist, fingers thin as twigs. They pulled gently, almost kindly, as if asking me to stay. I don't remember leaving. I only remember the sound of my own heartbeat against the hum of the forest, the feel of the mist thickening until it became impossible to breathe. When I woke, it was dawn. I was lying on the road outside town, covered in mud and pine needles. My car was parked a few meters away, door open, keys still in the ignition. I drove until the trees thinned and the sky turned blue again. I never told anyone what I saw in that cabin or what followed me back. I only know that sometimes when the city is quiet, I still hear the faint roll of a coin across porcelain. And when I close my eyes, I see the well, waiting. Because the clerk was right from the start. Whatever happens in Mazamitla, you go straight to your room. You don't look back. You don't take anything. And above all, you never ever return.